Hello and welcome to Crypto Security for Axie Managers. My name's Steve Woody and I'll be guiding you through this free training today. So I'd like to start by talking to you about crypto security and why it is so important. You see, the problem we have is that most people only care about their security after it's been compromised. And what I mean by this is that we will always favor convenience over security until we get compromised. So what do we need to do? Well, there are two things that need to be considered. The first is we need to have an awareness of the things that could happen to us. And the second is we need to take action. So we're going to start by talking about all of the things that you can do right now to take action to improve your online security. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the antivirus software that you use on your computer. The next thing is going to be the malware protection that you use. We're also going to look at VPNs, or virtual private networks. We're going to talk about browser protection. We're going to be talking about owning a secure crypto laptop. Now, this is an optional step, but if you are serious about being in crypto, this is something to consider. We're going to talk about two-factor authentication, or 2FA, as it's commonly known. We're going to be talking about password managers. We're going to be talking about your crypto wallet seed phrase. So let's jump straight into taking action with step one, your antivirus software. Now, you can use many different products, everything from Windows Defender, there's AVG, there's Norton, there's Bitdefender, there's so many different companies out there. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter as long as you have something in place. No one antivirus software is perfect, and you don't want to use everything because they can conflict with each other. So it's really about picking your poison, so to speak. But it is better to have one than nothing at all. And the reason that I recommend AVG is because there is a free version that you can get started with on a personal computer. But I personally recommend using AVG Ultimate. It is a paid software, but it is a really, really good software to use, and that also bundles in a VPN if you're going to take that as well. It can be used on mobile, tablets, and on desktop PCs and laptops. I think you get up to 10 devices with the Ultimate package. So the first thing you should consider is, do you have antivirus software? If you do, is it up to date? When is the last time you run it? I recommend you go and run it right now, so it can be running in the background whilst you are watching this presentation. Step two, malware protection. So this overlaps on top of your antivirus software. We use AVG for our antivirus, and we use Malwarebytes for our malware protection. This is going to look for things like browser jacking. It's going to look for things like Trojans. It's going to look for things that maybe AVG might miss. And I found in the past that one or the other will pick something up, and they have an overlap, but they do work together. So whilst I use AVG for our antivirus protection, I use Malwarebytes for malware protection. And again, the same as step one, I recommend that you download. There's a free version, or you can use the paid version, which I recommend, install that on your machine. The thing that I really like about Malwarebytes is it has crypto jacking, it has browser hijacking alerts, and it does additional things if you're working in the DeFi space to help protect you from things like your MetaMask wallet being compromised, or other things like that that we can talk about in the future with Ronin, etc., etc. Step three will be your virtual private network. Now, like with the antivirus software, VPNs are plentiful, and everyone has an opinion on which one is good and which one is bad. So some people don't even think that you need one. I'm not here to argue. I'm just here to let you know some things that you can do to harden your security. And so you do, if you have AVG, if you get the ultimate version, you do have a VPN included. But I find that the problem with some VPNs is that you compromise your speed for that additional layer of encryption and security. I find that NordVPN doesn't do that. I like using it. It works really well. So if you are looking for a paid plan, then NordVPN is a great VPN to be able to use. But there's lots of options out there. As I mentioned, if you're using AVG Ultimate, you have that included in the bundle. But I recommend a VPN because it gives you that additional layer of security with your encryption, and it's just something else to consider. The next is about browser protection. What browser are you using to surf the web? If you're using something like Chrome or maybe Firefox, that's understandable. I recommend a dedicated browser only for crypto. If you're not in a position to get a secure laptop, which we'll talk about in a minute, then this is a good next step. Have your browser. I personally recommend and use Brave. It is on Chromium, so it uses all of the Chrome extensions, but I only have the extensions for crypto installed, and I only use crypto for Brave. That is it. It does have the Tor network built in, but unfortunately, if you're using the Tor network, you're not going to be able to use your extensions. But you do have that option if you want to do some private browsing as well. So some things to consider there, but Brave Network, it is geared towards crypto. It has a token as well. It's worth looking into, and that is what I use and recommend for all of my crypto assets. In fact, with Axie, I found in the past that when Chrome has been a little bit laggy with the Ronin wallet, Brave has worked really well. So even though it's built on the same framework, it does seem to have a slight bit of difference depending on what you're doing in terms of transactions. So step 5 is going to be about securing a laptop. So if you're working in DeFi and you're working in crypto, especially if you're a scholarship manager and you've got lots of scholars, you might want to consider a secure laptop. What I mean by that is a laptop that is disconnected from the internet. It is never connected to the Wi-Fi. When you want to connect to the internet, you take your laptop out, you plug it into an Ethernet port, and you use it just for crypto. You do not use it to play games. You do not use it to scroll the internet for your social media. You only use it for your crypto transactions and nothing else. You might argue that's a little bit eccentric. That's a bit too much. Why are we doing that? Well, it depends on how much you have invested into crypto, because the argument could be, are you willing to lose everything you've got? Because if it comes down to the fact that you could accidentally click on a link in Discord or in a social media channel, the fact that if you have a laptop that you don't even access those platforms removes the chance of you being hijacked through common ways that sometimes happen. It happened to a friend very recently, and they published that on Twitter. Sometimes your guard's down, you could be playing games with friends, you might not even realize. You click on a link because you think it's something funny that a friend sends, and the next thing you know, your wallets are being emptied. So you can help to avoid that by having a secure cold laptop that is only used for crypto and nothing else. So the next thing I want to talk about briefly is two-factor authentication. And there's lots of different ways you can do this. Some people recommend YubiKey. Some people recommend Authy. Google Authenticator is good. But I do recommend, if you're going to use 2FA, then you do use an app. There are good and bad points to this, but I do not recommend, I would never use 2FA with SMS. So never use your mobile phone as your 2FA, because it is so easy to be able to clone your phone. And if they did that, they would be able to log in to change your email. And if you lose your email on your phone, you'll find yourself in a world of trouble fighting for that control. So I recommend, if you are going to have 2FA, then it is set up in an application that is dedicated for that, something like Google Authenticator. The next thing that I would recommend is going through every application that you use, whether it be Binance, whether it be your email for Gmail or ProtonMail, whatever it is you're using, whatever software you are using, if 2FA can be enabled, I recommend setting it up using the app for those one-time passcodes to be able to log in. The next step would be looking at password management. Where do you store your passwords? Now, there are lots of services available. I recommend, and we personally use LastPass. We do not give out QR codes. We do not send passwords and email addresses over social media networks or Discord channels. Everything we do is done via LastPass. Our scholars will give us their email address, and we will then give them a secure link to be able to access their login details. You could also set it up so they never see their password. They only access through the marketplace. That is another option which is available to you. So just things to consider about having things like password storage managers and how to encrypt your passwords there. So something else to consider and to look at is how do you store your passwords? And that kind of leads us into our next step, which is about how do you store your seed phrase. So make sure that your passwords are secured and stored in a place where they are encrypted and safe. Step 8 is about your crypto wallet and your seed phrase. Now, there are many different options out there. We know of Ronin, we know of MetaMask, we know of all of the different wallets that can be used. But you also may have heard the term hard and cold wallet. Now, the difference between a cold wallet and a hard wallet and a hot wallet is a hot wallet is connected to the internet and a cold wallet is offline. The difference between a soft and a hard wallet is a soft wallet is software, like a browser wallet or an application wallet, and a hardware wallet is a physical device like you see on the screen, the Trezor Model T there. So considering if you're going to have a hard or a soft wallet, a hot or a cold wallet, I recommend having a cold hard wallet. It is the safest form. Now what you need to consider is the purpose of a hardware wallet and why it is so good. So the problem with using a browser wallet is your seed phrase is on your computer. You need to be able to see that seed phrase. You need to be able to type that in on your computer. Therefore, if your computer becomes compromised, your seed phrase could become compromised. The beauty about using a hardware wallet is your seed phrase is never entered onto the machine. The idea is that you write it down and it is secure and safe. And even if your computer was to be hijacked or used and people were snooping around your hard drive trying to find your seed phrases, they wouldn't find them because they would not be on there. And that doesn't help if you're going to be hacked. That doesn't fix that problem, but there is a solution that can help you by adding an additional layer. And the Trezor is the only one that I'm aware of that does this. That incorporates what are called hidden wallets. A hidden wallet is an additional seed word in your seed phrase. So a typical seed phrase on a Trezor will be 12 words, and they will be simple English words. And your passphrase will be an additional word. It can be anything that you want, and you will have different wallets available to you from the different passphrases that you use. So you can have one seed phrase and multiple different passphrases. What that does is it allows you to create a hidden wallet. Your main wallet, your unhidden wallet, is like a dummy wallet that you never really use. You might store a little bit of crypto on there as a distraction if it ever does get compromised. But unless they know your passphrase, they're never going to be able to access all of your assets. And the idea about that is that you would not store your passphrase anywhere with your seed phrase. And it can be something simple like a word. Now, I don't recommend this, but to give you an example, you could use the word scholar. So you would have your seed phrase in your Trezor. You would use the word scholar, which would be for your hidden wallet, and then you would access your scholar's Axies. Now, one thing that you can do to help to compartmentalize it as you grow for scale, because you can only add 50 Ronin wallets at the moment per passphrase, is you might have Scholar 1, Scholar 2, Scholar 3, Scholar 4, etc., etc. Now, I do not recommend the word scholar, but if you pick a word that people aren't likely to choose and make it quite a simple word for yourself so it's easy for you to access, then having a numeric system with a word is a solid way, but try to avoid things like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 because that's too obvious. It's the first thing that people are going to try if they're aware that you are using a Trezor. So that is something to consider. I don't recommend a ledger or any other device. I definitely don't recommend just using a native browser wallet. I recommend if you're going to use a hardware wallet, then to make sure that you're using one that has a hidden wallet, because that additional layer of security is going to help you. Also, you could consider having different seed phrases for different wallets, but again, that could be a lot of work and it's a lot of stuff for you to look after. So I find that this kind of fixes both of those problems. So those are the things that you need to consider when taking action. So now let's move into the awareness. So some things that I would like you to be aware of, and we're going to briefly just look at these and then we'll talk through them in a bit more detail. The first, as we mentioned, is phone cloning, email hijacking, snooping, malicious links, phishing scams, direct message scams, social media scams, promotional scams. So let's go through these and have a look and talk about them. So phone cloning. So that is basically if somebody was to clone your SIM card on your phone. And as I mentioned, if you're using something like 2FA for two-factor authentication and your SIM card gets cloned, then somebody can use your phone to send that 2FA to be able to log in. They can do a password reset on your email account, and they're going to, if they've got access to your email and access to your phone, you're really going to be in a world of hurt because you're going to be completely locked out. And then the hacker or the scammer will then have the ability to lock you out of your own accounts whilst they take their time to be able to drain your funds. So definitely consider, if you've got a phone, that it's something that you have a backup available, but also consider some software, maybe something like a Prey Project. Prey Project is a really good way that you can remotely wipe your phone if you feel like it has been cloned. And some software that can help you with things like that. Email hijacking, as we just mentioned, is somebody gaining access to your email account to do password resets. So I do recommend having 2FA on your email client. I do also recommend avoiding things like Gmail, the basic Gmail. It's the most common platform to get hacked, and even though it's one of the most secures, you might want to consider something like Proton Mail or maybe just a paid service. Especially if you're doing scholars, if you've got a professional name, then to be able to use something like that. So for example, with us, we have Axie Scholar UK. Our website is axiescholar.co.uk. Therefore, we can create our emails, scholar1@axiescholar.co.uk, scholar2@axiescholar.co.uk. What that also allows us to do is it allows us to create a catch-all email address. So all of our scholars, if they do password resets or if they send anything, it goes directly into our main email address and we can capture everything. The scholar doesn't need that access to be able to do anything. So it's a good way, and people do that on Gmail. There's definitely some great videos online about that, but you just want to be careful with your email account that it doesn't get compromised and that you never give out your passwords for things like that. Snooping, something on the machine where somebody could be watching you. This is done through things like keyloggers, where they see every button that is pressed. It can be done as simply by visiting our website, clicking on a link. This software can be installed and it can be running silently in the background. This can be scraping all of your personal data, and if you ever enter your seed phrase, it can be compromised at this point. One of the most common ways that people get compromised is they have snooping scripts on their computer, and when they install and set up their wallet for the first time, the scammer will have their passphrase. They will then sit patiently, wait for some crypto funds to be loaded in, and then they will take them, maybe a few weeks, maybe even months later. So something to consider if you are going to be setting up a new wallet is to first run those antivirus and anti-malware protection, just to ensure that you are working from a sanitized, clean environment. The next thing we're going to talk about is malicious links. This is something you have to be aware of. It is dangerous. I like AVG because it offers a safeguard that allows you to see if the links are malicious or not. And you want to be able to see and know that the links you're clicking on are genuine links and not malicious ones. And that also brings me to the last point here of promotional scams. These two tie in quite nicely together. What you'll normally find with scammers is they'll take out ads and they'll put them on social media websites like Facebook or Google. And so you'll click on an ad and you'll actually be clicking on a fake website. They do this because they trust that you'll click on it before the ad gets taken down. And if the ad gets taken down, they'll just spin up a new ad account. And it works out to be profitable for them because they're only after that one person that they can empty the funds from. So you need to be very, very careful when you're clicking on links. Make sure you go directly from a trusted source. Don't click on anything malicious. If you get sent a link, even if it's from a friend, just consider that their account may have been compromised. That link may be malicious. And just do not click links unless you know it to be safe. If a friend, even if a family member sends me a link and it's unsolicited or they're just sending me something to look at, I'll always check in with them first. Make sure it's them, and make sure that they meant to send that link. So just be careful. I would also avoid anything like freemium software, any nulled or cracked software, any illegal or illicit websites where you could be downloading things, working on things like the dark web, anywhere where you could be getting things like if you're using torrents to download free games and free software and doing your crypto on that machine, then you are asking for trouble. So just make sure that you're aware of the environment that you're working in and that you are consciously not clicking on malicious links. Phishing scams, we've talked about this briefly. This is where somebody takes your data. They pretend to be someone they're not, normally through a website. It could be a support or a help desk. And this kind of leads into the next 2 points, which is social media and direct messaging scams. So what we will normally find is that you will have a problem in crypto. You'll go into Discord or Telegram. You'll say, hey, I need some help. And then you'll be bombarded by the next 50 messages from the official support help desk. Sir, please let me take your seed phrase and help you connect your wallet here, etc., etc. If you do these things, you are more than likely, in fact, almost certainly going to be scammed. These are just taking your seed phrase so they can steal your crypto. So you need to be aware that on social media, people will pretend to be your friends, your family. People will pretend to be the people that you follow on your pages, and they will set up fake accounts. They will comment under the profile, and it is a common thing that we see a lot of. And there will also be a lot of bots. If you go onto Twitter these days and type the word MetaMask into a comment, you will see exactly what I mean. You will be bombarded with comments about, sorry to hear about your problem, please contact our MetaMask help desk. They're going to get you to either connect your wallet, and if you do that, they will take your seed phrase without your awareness, or they will give you a form and ask you to enter your seed phrase. They may even give you a look-alike MetaMask website, asking you to re-import your seed phrase. They are very clever, they look very sophisticated, and if you're not paying attention, it is very, very easy for them to be able to catch you. And so you have to be on your highest of alerts. The most dangerous thing alongside naivety in crypto is complacency. So being too naive and not paying attention, and being too complacent and getting caught with your guard down. So these are the things that you need to be aware of when you are considering being involved in crypto. So what do these scams look like? Well, here's a good example. These are just a few of the messages that you might be getting. Things like update your account, things like click here because you've won a prize, things like, hey, I'm sorry to hear you're having a problem, let me help you. All of these things are preying on the weak and the vulnerable and the uninitiated in the hope that you will fall for it, you will put in your details, and then you will give them access. So you really need to make sure you don't do that. Also, as I said, be aware of fake help desks. We've already talked about social media, Google Ads, we've talked about this as well. And so this is what led me to create this guide. Posted recently because a lot of managers keep telling me that I should remove my Trezor because I should be doing automation for paying my scholars. And I'm sorry, but I strongly disagree. If you're a manager and you are not using a hardware wallet like a Trezor to protect your assets, then I do personally consider this as negligence, because you have a duty of care to protect those assets. Your scholars rely on it. You rely on it, I'm sure. And so you are not, or you shouldn't be in a position where you can just throw those assets away. So if you have an awareness of something you can do to protect yourself and you are not doing that thing, then that is negligence. And so I want you to take this seriously because it's important. Too many people have now been scammed and have lost their Axie as a result of favoring automations and convenience over security. And whilst we know that Sky Mavis are working on this, and it's the absolute top of their priority to be able to get this fixed. In fact, I was talking earlier about this, and I know that it is coming soon. But we have to be patient. I would rather pay somebody to sit in my house and do payroll and manually pay all of my scholars every single fortnight over the course of several days than I would use an automated script. And that is nothing against the incredible people that have built these brilliant scripts, and I'm sure they are amazing. But I am not risking all of my assets that could be compromised so easily in a situation like that. So just something to consider. As I mentioned before, people value convenience over security until it gets compromised. The last thing I want to say to you is that if it's not your keys, it is not your crypto. Your seed phrase is the single most important asset that you own. All of your crypto assets are linked to your seed phrase. And so if your seed phrase is lost, stolen, or compromised in any way, then you run the risk of losing those assets. And there is no point building wealth if you cannot protect that wealth. So please, please, please take extreme care when you are considering how to store and look after your seed phrase. If you write it on a piece of paper, then it's going to be on your desk. Somebody could find it. If you store it on your computer, someone could access it. If you store it in a password manager, somebody, even though it's a lot harder, and I still recommend that over anything else that I've mentioned, it's still on a machine. If it is on paper, what happens if there's a flood? You know, we've seen the typhoons in the Philippines. What if your seed phrase is on a piece of paper and you've just been flooded out of your house? You need to consider what happens. So if you've got a piece of paper, put it in a bag. Waterproof that bag. Make sure it's in a fireproof, waterproof environment. If you have a safe, put it in a safe. In fact, you might want to look at what is commonly known in the industry as multiple locations, because there's a thing called Shaman. What happens is you can take your seed phrase, cut it into sections. So if you have a 12-word seed phrase, you might want to cut it into 3 different sections and store it in 3 separate locations. That way, if anybody got hold of a part of your seed phrase, they wouldn't have the other 2 parts. I'm not going to tell you what I do, but I do definitely recommend having a fire waterproof safe with a part of your password and another safe storage location somewhere else with another part of your password. I also recommend doing this twice so that you have 4 to 6 separate locations. This sounds like a lot of work, but when you're talking about your life savings or your generational wealth, and you're talking about the difference that we're talking about making here, these are things you might want to consider. Don't be reckless with money because you've gained it easily. A fool and their money are easily parted, and if you are not careful, and if you are careless with your crypto, then you will find your crypto will fall into the hands of somebody else. So please treat this with the respect that it deserves. And the best way to protect yourself is to limit your social exposure. It's best sometimes just not to tell anyone that you're in crypto. The less people that know, the less chance somebody is going to find you. And that's obviously something where I'm screwed, but I value helping people over making money. And if this helps you, then it is worth sharing. So my closing thoughts: if you are connected to the internet, you are at risk. We will always do our best to minimize that risk with the best practices to be able to protect ourselves. So the things that you need to consider: keep yourself private, be aware of the risks, set up a multi-layer security system, take action and do that. Have a plan in case of a breach. A quick example of this is a friend recently who had a script running, whereas if they get pinged a message if one of their wallets changes, therefore they can run a script very quickly from their phone, and they can move all of their Axies out of their accounts from a click of a button. That is an example of having a plan in case of a breach that you can mitigate damage, and having those fail safes in place. And then consider any backups, fallbacks in case they are required. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you. And above all else, please stay safe, and we will see you in the metaverse.